have a very special guest for tonight. She's made a triumphant debut as Faramondo at the Göttingen International Händel Festival 2014. She has rocked the concert halls of Wrocław, of Berlin, and of course of the Göttinger Stadthalle in 2015 with Susanna in the title role. However, she's always also a fantastic Rossini mezzo-soprano. She's doing Verdi, she's doing contemporary music. She's been nominated for a Grammy for work on contemporary opera. What a joy to talk to you tonight. Welcome, Emily Fons.
Thank you, Tobias. It's great to be here.
Lovely to see you. We've just talked to you. It's early morning where you are. So where exactly are you at the moment?
Yes, I'm in Seattle visiting my boyfriend. I live in Wisconsin, but Seattle is even 2 hours earlier than that. So it's 9 a.m. here, bright and early for a singer.
And you have lovely weather at the lakes.
It's a little bit typical Seattle, getting a little bit of the gray, cloudy, rainy skies today. But yesterday was beautiful. You just never know. You never know.
So what you're doing today? Are you having a lot of practice to do? You're doing some lovely walks around the lake, or you're cooking something? Or what's the plan? Because the day here is nearly over.
Yeah. Well, I went for a run this morning already, so that was good. I got out and ran along the canals near Lake Union in Seattle a little bit. Other than that, I'll probably do a little bit of work. I brought a lot of music with me. I don't do the iPad thing. I bring the actual music, so it gets very heavy in my suitcase. But I'll do a little bit of work today and then have dinner with some friends later. So it'll be a good day.
And you said you went for a run. Is that something you have to do as a singer, or you actually enjoy running?
I actually enjoy running, oddly enough. Actually, I did a lot of running when I was in Göttingen the first time. A lot. I was training for a marathon, so I ran just around the wall like a hamster in a wheel. Just.
So how many times in total, actually? Did you count?
I don't even remember. A lot, maybe 10.
Obviously, you remember the wall, der Wall in Göttingen. Is there any other memories you have of the town?
Oh, so many. The Gänseliesel, of course, and just the beautiful Stadthalle and the Stadtwald. I ran in the Stadtwald a lot outside of the city. Brüder Grimm Allee. I remember some of the street names and some very good ice cream shops, I remember. And I was running so far, I would go to the cafes after my run and I would eat so much food. I think there's a great pizza place, and I think they were just concerned about how much pizza I was able to eat as one person. And also just the people, just beautiful memories of the lovely people I had a chance to meet that are associated with the festival, and all the players in the fog. And of course you and Antje and just everybody. I have only wonderful positive memories. Well, I do have a funny story. You know, every time you go to a country where you're trying very hard to speak the language, it takes a couple days for your ears to wake up. And I remember going to the cafe and needing the internet password. And the lady said, it's Vatertag. And all I heard was Vatertag. I couldn't, and I asked probably 6 or 7 times. And finally she wrote it down. And I felt so stupid. It was just such a simple thing. And the next day I went back and I said, what's the password today? And she looked at me and said, Muttertag. And I said, okay, I verstehe.
Well, but talking about internet, it's fantastic that we can actually talk to each other via the internet. And of course, internet seems to be a very vital thing, being on tour so much as you are.
Yeah, very much so. And especially this past year, all the things we've been able to do as organizations and as performers, just because we have the internet and Zoom and streaming capabilities for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're at Seattle right now. You've done a lot of work in the States, of course, and in big opera houses in Canada, in the States. Do you think this is an essential difference between the opera houses in Europe and the opera houses in the States?
Well, I mean, in general, I would say maybe the size of the spaces in the States just tend to be so much bigger, and they're often, some of them were built in the 1960s, 1970s, where nobody seemed to be particularly concerned with how things looked. So
we've got a word in German. It's called brutalism. It's an architectural style, brutalism.
Precisely. So we have a few beautiful, we call them jewel box theaters. The few older, very beautiful theaters, like actually in Detroit, Michigan, gorgeous little opera house. So we have some very unique, beautiful spaces. But even something like the Chicago Lyric, seats 3,500 people or something. It's just they're so big. And often not as, the opera houses in Europe tend to be, down in a, kind of the town square area or center of town, and they're very much an architectural staple of the town or the city. And that's just not often the case in the United States, that they're, so central and an architectural feature and known. If you ask an average Chicagoan, where is the Chicago Lyric Opera?
You
probably won't know. People would come in with and just know. Yeah.
You were frozen a little bit, but
I would say
still got the. You were a little bit frozen, but we still got the rest of what you said, but in a very quick way. So you said about the size, but in Europe, of course, we've got two very opposite ways of belief. There's the repertoire theater, so you offer like 20, 30, 40 productions sometimes at the same house, and you've got Händel the one night and Rigoletto the second night, and then you've got a Händel and a Wagner, so a big change. And then you've got the Stationen theater, where you actually play 10, 20, 30 performances in a row. Is there any preference you have for one of the systems?
Oh, that's a good question. I like a repertoire theater just because more performers tend to be around at one time, and my experience with that in the States is usually a summer festival like Santa Fe Opera or something like that. And it's just kind of an exciting feeling having more people working and things kind of changing frequently. And a lot of the times in the States, I go someplace, I'm there for a month, we do one show, only maybe 4 performances, and that's just it. And then they close it up and, do the next show. So I do kind of like the alternating, different shows every night. And I think I do like that better.
And of course, you're doing a wide variety of repertoire. Actually, you've done Rossini, you've done Maddalena and Rigoletto, you've done contemporary opera, early music, of course, a lot, L'Orontea, and of course, Faramondo, Susanna, etc. So is there some beauty in actually specializing in repertoire, or why do you prefer actually doing a wide range of repertoire?
I mean, I think both are completely true. And I think whichever one you have, you wish you had the other. It's one of the grass is always greener, we say, on the other side of the fence. I think for me, it's been really wonderful to sing so many different things. And that's not necessarily a choice I made. It's just kind of how my career has gone. But I think technically, I actually think it makes me a better singer because I'm always kind of adjusting I try to maintain one technique, but have to use my voice in so many different ways that I can't leave any stone unturned. I have to really know my voice in all its different aspects. And, I get to explore a lot of different types of characters, a lot of different types of musical languages, I guess you could say. And I think it makes me braver in a way as the performer to say yes to things because I don't feel like I'm stepping outside my comfort zone very often. I don't get to have a comfort zone.
Okay, well, it's quite interesting because, of course, there are parts of our audience they actually feel pity if you have to sing contemporary music. They say, "Oh, poor you have to sing contemporary music." Is that due to, I don't know, German contemporary music in comparison to American contemporary music, or is contemporary music harder to sing?
Well, for me, it's definitely harder. It's harder to learn. It's not necessarily always harder to sing. It's harder to learn. And I think one of the things that makes contemporary music so hard is that, especially if it's a composer where we're hearing their work for the first time, we don't have a background knowledge of their musical style. So we don't have an expectation necessarily when we show up to the theater to see a performance. It's just all new. Whereas even if you go to see a Handel opera that you've never seen before, your ears know what they're about. They know the world they're about to live in.
And you've got 20 recordings of colleagues to listen to.
Exactly. When you're in the audience, for a new show, you have no idea what you're going to hear. You don't often get, musical themes that establish themselves the same way as, music from the 18th century or 19th century. So your ear is it's always changing. There's not much to hold on to, which I think can feel disappointing initially. But I think there is a lot of beauty in keeping our art form going. And you don't have to like everything. You can, it's like going to the movies. You can say, well, I didn't like that movie, but you're still going to see new movies. You're not going to only watch Wizard of Oz for the rest of your life, or,
Well, some people might, I don't know.
it's true,
But does it put pressure on you always to have, I don't know, Dame Janet Baker and Anne-Sophie von Otter lurking around the corner when you learn a piece like Ariodante or Julius Caesar or something? Or you don't listen to recordings?
I listen to a lot of recordings because I think everybody does things their own way, and everybody has things that, are naturally easy for them and that are naturally difficult for them. And, I don't feel pressure to imitate anybody because I know that whatever was easy for Janet Baker or Anne-Sophie von Otter isn't necessarily what's easy for me. Something else might be. But there's so much knowledge to be gained from how they sing and the tempos they use and where they take breaths and how they ornament certain phrases. And I think Anne-Sophie von Otter's recording of Ariodante is stunning. I think it's so beautiful. I listen to it constantly. So I'm a big fan.
Well, she's fantastic. She was here also a few years ago, and she was an absolutely lovely person as well, because, some people have a reputation of being divas. Do you think that being a diva is part of the job, or do you think there are certain reasons why people are perceived as a diva?
I don't think it's part of the job, but I do think I understand why people might, I think it is difficult to be on the road a lot. It's difficult to have high standards for yourself and to have people expecting a lot of you. And I can see how, people who are on the road a lot and working, who are, very famous and out there working all the time can want things a certain way just because they need something in their life to be easy. And I could see how that could turn into being a little bit more demanding than maybe people are comfortable with. But I don't know. I like to give people a little bit of a free pass until I've worked with them personally. But I think in general, I think in the industry, I haven't met too many divas or divos.
But has there been a point for you where you said, stop, this is my limit and I'm not going to go any further? Or has that not been the case until now?
No, I feel like I've had a very balanced life and I feel pretty content with how things have gone. So no complaints from me.
This is also a question, of course, we've talked about contemporary music, but also we can talk about contemporary Regie Theater, as we call it in Germany. Of course, again, we've got some members of the audience, they say, oh my God, it's been such a modern production, how terrible. Do you enjoy doing modern productions on stage?
Well, I'll say this, I'll qualify it. In general, yes. But I think it's very important for me to know that the director has considered everything, usually they have a concept, of what's happening in the show. And if from the beginning to the show to the end of the show, they stay true to their concept, even if it's insane, even if everybody's living underground in the year 2075 or something, even if that's their concept, if from the downbeat to the last note, they stay true to that, I will go along with it. But if it's just sort of an idea and they don't follow it through, then that can be really frustrating, because, we need a complete concept, I think as an audience and as performers. So I'm all for the, new modern stagings and direction, as long as it's consistent, I guess. Yeah.
And other question concerning stage direction, there are some singers and actors especially who actually like developing things until the last moment, and the others to say, oh, tell me what to do, and I have to train it for the rest of the rehearsal period. So what do you prefer?
I like freedom to explore, kind of to the end of the process, and see how things pan out, unless it's a very difficult piece of music, where I need to kind of know early on, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here, this is what's happening. And I like to kind of set it that way, just so that I, for memory reasons and technical reasons, if I'm a little bit nervous or something. But in general, I like to play around, and I like to have colleagues that improvise a little bit, and where things can change in the moment.
And do you actually think your job is dangerous sometimes? I mean, if you see a revolving stage and pyrotechniques and, things kind of falling down, are you sometimes scared of what's happening on stage?
Yes. Yeah, I would. And actually, I think that sometimes with modern things, well, sometimes with older sets too. But I do think that I as I get older, I take safety more seriously. Especially as a young artist, I was, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that, sure. But then you get older and you realize, no, there are people whose job it is to keep us safe in the theater, and we need to take that seriously. And so there have been times when I've been up on something very high and not enough of a barrier, or things like that, where, as I get older, I feel more comfortable saying, I don't feel safe, we need some, some protection or something. But yeah, there are definitely moments where you're getting to know a new set, like you said, it's rotating or something, and it can feel a little dangerous, but the people whose job it is to the technical crew and everything, I mean, we really rely on them. Think about it, all the staircases you see on the stage, everything, we are relying on those people, especially in a repertory theater where things are going up and down and up and down. And, we really rely on them to do it right and keep us safe. And so it is a pretty big deal. Yeah.
And do you think it makes a difference, because of course, you sing in Berlin, in Tokyo, in the States? Does it make a difference for you where you actually sing a repertoire? If you sing Fledermaus in Tokyo, is it that different from doing a Fledermaus in Berlin or Fledermaus in Chicago?
In terms of safety, or just in general?
No, just in general.
Oh, I think, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. I remember doing a Fledermaus in Chicago, but almost the entire cast was Viennese, except for me. And it was really intimidating, even though we were in Chicago, especially because for a lot of them, they've done it so many times, and it was fun for them to change some of the dialogue. And, you can't change it because I won't know what you said, necessarily. But, yeah, and I will be doing a Fledermaus in Japan, and of course, it will have a very different feeling. A lot of the chorus will be Japanese. And yeah, it's kind of a beautiful thing that we can take these productions and they can all take on a little bit of flavor from wherever we happen to be.
Yeah, it's just a very artificial business. I always think, it's so weird to explain to someone who has never seen an opera, to say, well, they're actually singing in Italian, but they're acting also. And there's some, it plays in the Middle Ages, but they're playing with modern costumes. So it's very artificial business we're into. And it's very, very hard to explain. So how about, we've talked about opera houses, but you've also mentioned there are a lot of festivals. Because over here, of course, we're very proud of our European festivals of Salzburg, Bayreuth, Göttingen, of course, Halle, Karlsruhe, whatever. So is there a rich festival scene also in the States?
Oh, definitely. In the summer, there are lots of festivals. Of course, we have the Santa Fe Opera. We have St. Louis Opera Theater that has a summer festival as well. We have Glimmer Glass. Central City, which is in Colorado, and then lots of the Blossom Festival, which is the Cleveland Orchestra's summer home. The Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles, I think, does some things in the summer. So yeah, there's definitely a lot going on, and it always feels very special to get asked to be part of any of those summer festivals. It kind of feels like opera camp.
And how about early music? How about early music? Because in former days we had, of course, the big hub in Boston and San Francisco. So is that more common now, also all over the United States?
Well, actually, just in Chicago now, in the last, I guess it's maybe already been almost 10 years, but there's a company called Haymarket Opera that's doing really well, doing really beautiful productions in Chicago. And, unfortunately, I'm not as familiar with the Baroque scene in the United States as I wish I were. It's kind of two separate worlds in a way. And it's, it can be hard to cross over. But I've been fortunate to live close enough to get to do some things with Haymarket. So that's been a really wonderful addition for me. But I do think there are, smaller, we call them boutique companies that are popping up and doing more specialized things around the country for sure.
So, you said it's a crossover. So, would you say it's a no-go if you're a Baroque singer if you're in the Baroque drawer, let's put it that way, to sing some contemporary music? Because in 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was a little bit like that in Europe too. So if you had to be a Baroque singer and to specialize, and there was the big forbidden vibrato question, but we've become a little bit more relaxed about that. So how is the scene in the States?
Well, I think it's complicated. In the larger opera houses, obviously Baroque operas are performed, not always, in my experience at least, often not at Baroque pitch, because they're using the orchestra that's attached to that opera house, or maybe even the local symphony plays for the opera, and so often not at Baroque pitch. Whereas the boutique Baroque companies or festivals are definitely obviously going to be a Baroque pitch. And I think there are some singers in the United States for sure who have been able to focus a lot on Baroque music, but I think often I don't know, it's just complicated. I've been fortunate to sing some Baroque music in bigger opera houses, but yet not really cross over into the Baroque festival and scene in the States. So I think there is some crossover, but I think the singers who tend to sing in the bigger opera houses are not necessarily the singers that specialize in Baroque music, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm just going to say a little word to all the viewers who've only switched in now. So this is the Händel-Talk from the digital festival of the Göttingen International Händel Festival. And my guest today is Emily Fons. She's been Faramondo in 2014. She's been Susanna at fantastic concerts in Berlin, in Wrocław, and in Göttingen. And now she's here tonight, live from Seattle. Early morning talk for you. It's not a late night, but an evening talk for us. But talking about this tour, it was quite crazy actually, doing Susanna 3 times in a row in totally different concert halls, and then at Wrocław, totally new hall in a historical building in Berlin, the Konzerthaus, and the Stadthalle, 1960s, kind of historical as well. And so how was the experience? Was it very different every night?
I think I was just having such a great time with everybody that I didn't focus on that so much. It's such an ensemble piece, and the orchestra is just so incredible. And Lawrence does such a good job of keeping everybody, engaged in the moment. I guess that even though all the spaces were so different, I thought, we still kind of gave our, the same show every time. But it was definitely exciting, to be in the Konzerthaus for sure, beautiful space. And the theater in Wrocław was wonderful, just absolutely beautiful. And now I think it was just so much fun and just so exciting to take the show around to those different places. And every place we performed, I thought, felt great.
I have to admit, I wasn't very familiar with Susanna before we put it on the program, and I was quite amazed how demanding the part is, because it's pretty high and then a really low arias, and it's the full range, and it's very long as well. So I mean, it's kind of like a marathon. We've talked about running actually. So did you experience that, or is that, if you're like into it, it's okay? I don't know. Is that a hard part to sing?
Actually, now that you say that, I do remember as we went along, I think we cut every performance. We had to cut more and more, because in Göttingen, I think it was over 4 hours.
Yeah.
Really long.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and the audience in Göttingen is so lovely and wonderful. They were right with us the whole time. But yeah, it definitely, especially because that final aria is kind of crazy, to kind of make sure you still have that energy for, to deliver, a great kind of like dopo notte, like a big, great aria at the end. But it's broken up enough, and the character of Susanna is a little different too. I think she has a different energy than a pants role in a way. So maybe I felt a little bit of a softer approach that maybe conserved a little bit or something. But yeah, it definitely was a long night, but beautiful music and a great cast. So I just got to sit back and listen to some great singing a lot of the 4 hours.
You've talked about pants roles, Hosenrollen in Germany, trouser roles. So you're doing quite a lot of them, of course. Do you enjoy also on stage being a man?
Well, most of the time I'm just a boy.
Okay. That's true. That's Händel and Cherubino, and yeah, that's true. They're just both. But Faramondo was a man. You were a warrior with a gun and everything. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, again, like the older I get, and I always, a lot of young mezzo-sopranos ask me about like, how do you act like a boy? How do you act like a man? And I just say it's not so much that you are becoming the other gender or something. I just try to find a really neutral place, because at the end of the day, we're all just people. So if you just kind of start at zero and tell the story, I think it kind of comes through just because of what the words you're saying. It becomes believable. And I think I've calmed down as I've gotten older, and it's less about the like, oh, I'm a man, and, just kind of more about telling the story and letting people suspend their disbelief a little bit. But I definitely enjoy it. I think it's really fun. Some of my favorite, Cherubino is probably one of my favorite, and Händel. Oh my gosh, if I could sing Händel the rest of my life, I think I would. It's just a ton of fun.
And of course, there's another trouser role coming up in September, Ariodante. Is it the first time you're doing that?
It is the first time, yes. Yeah, another.
Is it a kind of dream role for you?
Definitely. I mean, just stunning music from beginning to end. But I think, kind of like you said with Susanna, it's a long show, and it's the arias. I mean, Scherza in Fida is about 11 minutes long or something. It might not be demanding in the same way as Con l'ali di Costanza or Dopo Notte or something in terms of coloratura and facility and things like that. But I think just the emotional, stretch of the role, and I find it really challenging in a lot of ways, but every single piece is exciting and amazing to sing. So I've really enjoyed learning it.
But talking about Scherza and Fida, I mean, musically it's quite simple. You have da 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 dee, da da. It looks on the page, it looks pretty easy, to be honest. I mean, it's probably easy to sight read, but how do you practice something like that? Because of course you need the energy. How do you practice energy?
That is a great question. Again, I think a lot of it goes back to the text. If you really practice it as if you believe the text you're singing, and not just as if it's a vocalese that happens to have some words, with it. I think it's, you find that energy, you find the color in your voice that you want to use. but yeah, it can be, you know, learning the notes and then adding the emotion and the weight of the text and everything are two different things. And, you know, at the point when they start to come together, it's really exciting. But yeah, I would say just always going back to the text.
And of course, you've always in Baroque aria, you've got the A section, then you've got the B section, then you're going actually back to the A section. So what are you personally doing to make this repeat of the A section more interesting, or don't you have to do anything?
For in general in Ariodante, or in
general, not with Scherzo and Fida, just in general, because, you know, we've got some singers, they do overkill of ornamentations, and others just sing it plainly. So what's your approach to da capo arias?
You know, I usually start with overkill and then kind of work my way backwards. I have a fantastic friend and colleague, Jory Vinacour, who I don't know if you know Jory, but he writes my ornaments for me.
Okay.
And, you know, I've always said I can sing better ornaments than I can write. So I'd rather have somebody else write them so that I can sing. So he writes ornaments for all the arias, and he goes nuts. He goes, you know, over the top. And then I work through them and you know, leave some things out, and, you know, and then kind of figure out what fits. And then, you know, I also really like, Lawrence is such a great resource, and, you know, you can usually see on his face whether he appreciates an ornament or not. So it's a little bit of teamwork too, to, you know, when you get there, to kind of find the thing that because you never want to take away from the beauty of the A section of the aria when you return to it. You know, you always, and you know, with Scherzo and Fida and some of the other pieces, especially with the largo pieces and things that are slower, some of the harmonies are so stunning just as they are simply written that sometimes it almost seems a shame to change them too much. There are things you want to hear again for a second time, and you want to hear them exactly how you heard them the first time because they were so beautiful. So I try to be aware of that and leave some things kind of untouched because Händel got them right the first time, you know, and we don't need to change them at all.
Is there a degree of improvisation in your ornaments?
Not for me. That is a terrifying idea to me.
Okay, because the other singers, they say, well, I do something different every night. So, but...
Yeah, I know. Chris Lowry, who I've sung with twice now in Göttingen, I think he does that. He's very in the moment, and he feels confident to make those changes. But I think that also might be something, if you specialize as a Baroque singer and you do this all the time, I think maybe your confidence for improvisation is higher than mine, where, you know, I sing, you know, if I'm lucky, one Baroque opera every couple of years, or, you know, so I feel like I want to just have it set in stone.
Now, talking again about Ariodante, actually, you know, usually we have a happy end in an opera. Here we have got a happy beginning. Ariodante loves Ginevra, her father approves, marriage is arranged. So what happens? I mean, you know, we have to fill another 3.5 hours.
Yeah, it's a little bit Much Ado About Nothing, the Shakespeare. You know, Polinesso points out to Ariodante is sharing with Polinesso, oh, life is so great, I'm about to be married, Ginevra loves me. And Polinesso says, oh, that's interesting, because she was just giving me some, you know, special attention. And, you know, Ariodante doesn't want to believe it. And Polinesso says, well, you just wait here, I'll show you. And of course, Ginevra, it's not Ginevra, you know, who's up there. He has, her name is slipping my mind. Can you help me out?
Might be
Dalinda.
Atalanta. Oh, I mean, sorry, I'm getting confused with all the Händel characters.
So Dalinda has, you know, is dressed up a little bit to look like Ginevra. And so of course Ariodante thinks that Ginevra is being unfaithful to him, which is grounds for a woman being, you know, put to death. That's it, if you're unfaithful. So Ariodante then, you know, wants to kill himself, wants to, you know, drown himself in the sea. And of course, Ginevra has no idea that this is happening. She, you know, was not a part of this plot. And Dalinda was tricked into it, you know, as well. She wasn't trying to be malicious either. But of course, in the end, you know, the truth comes out, and Delinda confesses to Ariodante, no, that wasn't Ginevra that you saw. So Polinesso, you know, eventually is, you know, killed. And of course, conveniently, while he's dying, he confesses his whole plot, you know, which seems to happen in opera. You know, people decide to come clean at the last minute, which helps the plot resolve. And of course, we find out the truth that Ginevra is not guilty, and the king pardons her and brings her back, and Ariodante can go on to be with Ginevra. So then we get our happy ending.
So do you prefer operas with happy ending, or do you prefer really dramatic endings? I mean, because Rigoletto, for example, that's not a happy ending. And how about?
I think Rigoletto is a perfect opera, and that's coming from somebody who prefers, you know, early music, and I really think it's a perfect opera. So that, but I think if you're going to have a dramatic ending, I think what I appreciate about something like Rigoletto is it's pretty quick. We don't draw. I mean, yes, of course, we have the duet at the end, but from the moment you realize what's going on until the end of the opera, it's pretty quick, and I think that's really dramatic and exciting. In a way, I think I do like that better. I think I do like a dramatic ending as opposed to a happy ending, because so many of the happy ending operas, the ending is drawn out or something. It takes so long, it seems, to get to the resolution. Well, I guess that's the meat of the opera itself. But yeah, no, I think I'm a.
Well, most of the times it's not really believable. You know, I mean, if you spend 3.5 hours with intrigues and, you know, discussions and whatever, and then suddenly everyone loves each other, it just doesn't seem very realistic. So sometimes the dramatic ending seems a little bit more nearer the truth, actually.
I think you're right. I think you're right. But, you know, we've accepted over the centuries the, you know, mistaken identity and, you know, all the normal plot twists and everything. And yeah, and I guess, you know, we need both. We can't have all operas end like Rigoletto, or nobody would go to the opera anymore.
Well, of course, you know, we need both because we've got different audiences in every show. I mean, there are some people that absolutely need a happy ending, and there are others that say, well, if it's not, you know, it can't be dramatic enough, and let's have a lot of deaf people on stage. But it's very different audience. Probably. Yeah. So, you know, we're doing a concert performance of Ariodante, of course, in September. Do you think it has advantages to do concert performance, or do you generally prefer stage performances?
Oh, I think there are benefits to both. I do think in a concert performance, sometimes you can keep things moving faster because you don't have to wait for set changes. You don't have to, you know, you can keep the momentum of the story going in a different way. Of course, you know, visually it can be, you know, it's not as necessarily interesting, but for the people who really don't like modern stagings, or it kind of levels the playing field so that we take that out of the picture. Nobody has to worry about what the costumes are going to look like, or, you know, and you really get to just focus on the music and the storytelling. And also, it's really nice to be that close to the orchestra as a performer. There's kind of like a tightness to the group when everybody's up on stage together that I think can be really exciting. So I like both, but concert performances I think are great.
Well, of course, with stage performances, it's nice to have more performances, so you can, you know, you've got more chances to develop the part and everything. But you know, we are very happy to have the one stage performance, especially after it's been postponed twice. So keep your fingers crossed that things are happening in September, and we're very much looking forward to welcoming you here. You know, the story of Ariodante plays in Scotland. Do you think there are any Scottish tunes in there? Have you spotted any Scottishness?
Oh, well, I don't know that I'm an expert on Scottish tunes, but I will say that the overture for Ariodante I think is really beautiful, and there's some little dance figures. I have it right in front of me here. This little repeated figure of 3 notes. I have no idea if that is Scottish in any way, but it definitely stands out to me as something really unique and beautiful about the Ariodante overture. And I think it comes back in one of Ginevra's arias too, this little figure. So, I mean, someone like Lawrence would probably have something to say immediately about that, whereas I'm not a specialist enough to know, but there are unique, beautiful things for sure that maybe they are Scottish.
But talking about Lawrence, of course, we've kind of mentioned him once or twice. Of course, he's a very, very important figure in our festival as the artistic director, which he has been since 2012, and had many festivals, many oratorios, many operas. So how would you describe Lawrence Cummings for someone who hasn't seen him on stage or heard him make music?
Oh, Lawrence is probably my favorite conductor to work with. He just, I don't even know how to describe it. All I can say is that I feel like his attention to detail and his ability to be in the moment and understand what a singer needs as a performer, I think he's very generous in that regard. In the way, it's not easy all the time to bring together an orchestra and a singer. It's just not. Especially, when you only have one performance, maybe not that many rehearsals. But I think he seems to be very attuned to what a singer needs in terms of when we need to breathe. He's very generous and always in giving me a tempo that works for me, because I think that's also not easy in this music, especially when you have so many characters singing so many arias, and each singer has their own kind of idea of what tempo a piece should be and what works for their voice. And I think Lawrence does such a beautiful job of balancing the needs of the orchestra, because, sometimes as singers we forget, actually it's really difficult for the violins to play that that fast or that slow, or, and he knows all those things and brings everything together so beautifully. So I feel there's really a seamless feeling. Like I feel, and so often as a singer, you feel very separate from the orchestra. It feels like two things that, come together at the last minute, and, so I always, feel very distinct from the orchestra. But I think Lawrence does a beautiful job of bringing the whole piece into one sphere. And I think that's a really special talent. And his musical knowledge of Baroque music is so extensive and incredible, and his standards are incredibly high. And so I think the result is just a really beautifully, produced team effort. I could talk about how wonderful Lawrence is all day. I think he's really special, and I think watching him, people will see that.
Well, he is a team player, of course, because one of our stage directors has been totally amazed, because he said, it never happened to me that a conductor actually asked me, what kind of atmosphere would you like in this scene? Because usually I've got a little competition between, stage director and conductor says, well, singers come to the front, and stage director says, no, they have to jump up and down and run through the stage, whatever. And so there's usually, you have to be a diplomatic as a dramaturg or whatever. You have to make peace between stage directors and conductors every now and then. Whereas, Lawrence is a perfect team player, and he actually likes to enlighten what's on the scene. And one other time I thought it was quite telling, because one member of the audience said, well, I love the music, but I hated the production. And he said, well, you can't have the one without the other, because I'm actually making the music for what's happening on stage, and I get inspiration from the staging. So if you like the music, you have to like the director's handwriting also, because you can't separate that. So I find that quite amazing, because there are a lot of other conductors. It's very easy, to distance yourself from what's happening on stage as a conductor, and he doesn't do that. So I find that amazing.
Never. Yeah, he's very involved in the drama. That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, it's been a lovely talk, and we've already kind of touched at the end of this Händel-Talk tonight with Emily Fons. She's going to be the title role singer of Ariodante at the Göttingen International Händel Festival 2023. 21. In September, we had to postpone twice. So if you thought it was in May, we've got a digital festival now. And I would like to point out another fantastic guest tomorrow, which is Maurice Steger. Maurice Steger is a virtuoso on the recorder. He's actually been kicked out of his recorder class when he was a child, but he became famous as a recorder virtuoso. Fantastic story. So tune in tomorrow with Maurice Steger. And of course, we've got fantastic concerts coming up. We've got Palisander. They're doing a Händel opera arrangement for 4 recorders. And we've got Cemballes. They've got a fantastic interactive digital version of Il Floridante with a poetry slammer and lots of interactive tools. You can actually choose if you want to have an happy end or not. So maybe you should come and vote for a dramatic ending or a happy ending. And of course, we've got Sophie Rennet, a colleague of yours. She's been Lothario in 2017. And she's presenting a fantastic program with 50 Shades of Love, fantastic arias by George Frederick Händel and others. So do tune into the digital festival. I'm very happy to have been talking to you, and thank you very much for joining us, Emily Fons. We are looking forward to seeing you in September, and all the best until then.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon and evening.